This is Lindsay Stumpenhorst. I'm a social media savvy school leader, and you're savvy because you're listening to the House of Edtech with Chris Nesi.
Support for this episode of the House of Edtech comes from my awesome supporters. If you want to become an awesome supporter, go to chrisnesi.com/awesome. And from Kite Learning. Are you an educator trying to stay afloat in a sea of changing technology? Kite Learning knows how you feel. With Kite Learning, you can learn about all things EdTech at your own pace. Get a 14-day free trial by going to chrisnesi.com/kitelearning, and that's KYTE learning. And for that 14-day free trial, you will get unlimited access to all their content. You can track your personal progress, earn badges and certificates, and earn CEUs as well as college credit. Again, check out chrisnesi.com/kitelearning. Welcome to the House of Edtech Podcast. I am your host, Chris Nesi. The House of Edtech explores how technology is changing the way teachers teach and the impact that technology is having in education. I discuss technology that is changing our classrooms and schools, and I share tools and tips that you can hear today and use tomorrow. You're going to hear the stories of teachers, leaders, and creators just like you. The purpose? Whether you use it or not, technology is changing the way you teach and how your students learn. Hey, welcome back to the House of Edtech Podcast. Once again, this is episode 105, and of course, I am Chris Nesi, host of the show. Now, if you're joining me for the first time, hey, there is no better episode right now than this one to jump in on what we're doing here with the House of Edtech Podcast. In this episode, we are going to have all of our great segments. We're going to have an EdTech Thought, where we're going to talk about feedback for the podcast. Got a great EdTech recommendation, and we're going to make a little music today. Of course, I have the House of Edtech VIP and my featured content. Again, this episode, we are talking about hashtag tripod. First and foremost, here, as I record this, it is Saturday, March 10th, 2018, and I am going to date this podcast because I want to share a very special happy birthday shout-out. My oldest son, his 6th birthday is on Monday, March 12th. You know, my firstborn son, the apple of my eye, kind of makes me a little speechless because, you know, the last 6 years have kind of gone by so fast. If it sounds like I'm choking up, I'm not getting choked up. It's just, you know, I've seen him go from, you know, being firstborn and this little chicken of a thing that, you know, would lay on my chest. Now he's 6 years old. So for those of you that are more experienced parents with older children, you know exactly, you know, what I'm feeling. And, you know, maybe it's been many years since you felt that way, or maybe you still do. I don't see how I'm never going to not feel this way. And I guess that's one of the best parts about being a father. So happy birthday, Miles. Someday you'll maybe go back and listen to all of these episodes of the House of EdTech, and you'll hear this little shout out. Love you so much. Also up here, we have coming up, episode 106, not to get too far ahead, is going to be recorded sort of live, but on location, and not live, but it'll be on location from USET. That's right. I and the House of EdTech, I am going to USET in Utah for USET 2018, and I'm really looking forward to heading out there. I cannot wait to once again be in the physical presence of two former guests of this podcast, Derek Larson and Lynn Smargis. And also special shout out, again, supporting this episode specifically, Kite Learning, also instrumental in making it possible for me to get out to Utah. So I'm really, really looking forward to getting out there. The presentations that I'm going to be doing will include a session, well, 2 sessions on podcasting, a new session that I've kind of developed called Supporting That Teacher, and that is emphasized. And also I'll be doing a session on social media in education. One of the other aspects that I'm really, really excited about, in addition to getting to travel out to Utah for 4 days, is Manoush Zomorodi, host of one of my favorite podcasts, Note to Self from WNYC, is going to be keynoting, and she's going to be there. And I am really excited at the possibility of being able to, shake her hand, maybe take a picture, and let her know how much I appreciate the work she does on Note to Self. Keeping with the theme of this episode, which is #tripod, if you're not listening to Note to Self or you've never checked it out, give it a try here in the month of March. If you don't have time for it now, maybe make a note of it and come back to it at your convenience. But definitely check out Note to Self. Again, hosted by Manoush Zomorodi. Also here, before we get into the main segments, the House of Edtech Final Four is in full swing, folks. Voting is currently underway for the largest single-elimination EdTech tool tournament on the planet. I say that because I don't think there is another single-elimination EdTech tool tournament on the planet, but I'm really excited at the new format for this year's House of Edtech Final Four. If you head over to chrisnessy.com/HoET Final 4, and that's the number 4, you can participate. You can print out a blank bracket, you can print out the updated bracket, and you can vote during the different voting periods between now and episode 107, and you will directly impact what 4 EdTech tools make it to the 2018 House of Edtech Final Four. And again, I will reveal those results in episode 107, which is going to come out on April 8th, 2018. As I record this, we're wrapping up the second half of round 1, and then we will be into round 2. And again, go over there, vote on the Google Forms, and see if you can get your favorite EdTech tools to the Final Four. And the cool thing is, while you're maybe voting for your favorite tools, you will automatically be exposed to some tools that maybe you've never heard of. And when we get closer, and even in that episode, I will mention a lot of the quote-unquote losers. But again, these are all fantastic tools. So hope you participate if you haven't started to do so already. There are basically 3 days of voting per area of the bracket. So we're basically taking it a week at a time. This is really exciting. Really looking forward to seeing what happens. Again, it's something new. Hope you guys are enjoying it if you are already participating. So for this episode's House of Edtech Thought, I kind of come to you, my faithful listener, and even if you're new to the program, I am standing before you and I'm looking for help. How can we make the House of Edtech better? I am seriously asking, and I'm really curious to know, what do you like about this podcast? What don't you like about the House of Edtech? I'm curious, how has this podcast helped you? Now again, if this is your first time listening, I don't think I have done much to help you so far. But if you continue to listen, or you go back and listen, maybe this podcast will help you do something in education with technology. Now, I've been connecting with more listeners than ever before, and I want to continue to get to know you, and your feedback in conjunction with my own vision will help me continue to create valuable content and improve what I'm trying to do with this podcast and what I've been trying to do since January of 2014. Now, the way I see it, I've stayed very true to my original vision. And once again, when Caitlin encouraged me to start this and pursue this and create a podcast, I knew what I wanted to do. That's part of my personality. Now, your feedback can help me take it to where I want to go. And I don't want to be shy about this anymore. So here it is, straight up. I want this podcast, House of Edtech, to be the #1 EdTech podcast that educators turn to and listen to and share. I want this podcast to be the #1 recommendation when people are looking for the latest in EdTech resources and EdTech conversations. I'm kind of niche, and from time to time I will include topics and conversation that just relate to education overall. So I don't think it would be totally fair for me to want to be the most awesome #1 education podcast, because again, I do focus on the technology and the tools and tips and those conversations. So I'm not gonna go that far. So many people are talking up the show, and I can't thank you enough. There are more people talking about it on Twitter and mentioning it in Twitter chats, and I think that also has something to do with the fact that podcasts in general are even more mainstream than ever before. Now, as somebody who's been consuming podcasts for 4 years and listening to podcasts and starting the Education Podcast Network and everything I've done in 4 years, I kind of feel like, wow, how did I miss getting into podcasting back in 2008 when I was just kind of starting out as an educator? How did I miss the boat on this? Because I always had that interest in technology. Sometimes I kick myself for not having jumped into podcasting or having really been aware of it even earlier than I was. But now, let's say you're listening to me for the first time. Please continue. I want to hear from you too. Now, if you've been listening since episode 1 or you're here for the first time, again, that doesn't matter. If you have a point of view or something to share or a suggestion, please send that to me. Go to chrisnessy.com/feedback, and this is the main page on my website where you can go and you can share your thoughts, and there are a variety of ways to do that. And if you're willing to share, please choose the best method for you. Again, anytime you have an idea, something you want me to talk about, I create this for me, but I also create this for you. Be a part of the conversation, and let's make this podcast even better, and let's do it together. And that's my EdTech thought. Well, that was weird. I didn't expect that wouldn't work. So I'm going to have to reset up something here, right here, as I'm recording this, because I want this to work. Okay, so here we go. The music is back. So, the EdTech recommendation. Today I want to talk about the Chrome Music Lab. Chrome Music Lab is a website that makes learning music more accessible through fun, hands-on experiments. Right now, the music in the background, I'm using a tool called Melody Maker. And I think I can speed it up. I can slow it down. And as we're playing this, I can change the music just by clicking around here and just change the whole song. And this is a lot of fun. But let me stop the music part there and continue to tell you, now that I've showed you a little bit through audio, why it's pretty cool. And there are a number of other tools as I switch here in my browser. There's the Song Maker, rhythm tool that has an actual monkey playing a drum, and a triangle. There's a spectrogram, there's a piano, there's a sound wave tool, and it's all different things to explore sound. And many teachers have been using the Chrome Music tool as a tool in their classrooms to explore music and its connections to science, math, art, and more. They've been combining it with dance and live instruments, and there's a great collection of uses that people have been doing, and they're being shared on Twitter, and I will link to those in the show notes at chrisnessy.com/105. And you can play with these experiments across devices, on your phone, tablet. I'm doing it here on my Windows computer, just by opening up the site in a web browser such as Chrome. You could use another browser, but hey, it would make sense to use the Chrome Music Lab inside of Chrome. So check it out. There'll be a link to it in the show notes. You can also go over to musiclab.chromeexperiments.com, and that is my EdTech recommendation. And now it's time for the featured content of this episode. And as you can see By the title of the episode, hashtag Tripod 2018 is what I'd like to talk about today. Now, what is tripod? Well, it is short for Try Podcasts. So the hashtag tripod is TRYPOD. Now, there are a lot of people out there, about 4/5 of Americans, we'll just keep it here to the U.S. If you're an international listener, please do not feel slighted. But there are about 4/5 of all Americans who don't get what you're doing right now, listening to a podcast. But they should, because podcasts are awesome. And the more people listening to them, that's going to make the world a better place, I think. Now, and I could be a little jaded with that last statement, but I stand by it. Why do you love podcasts? Let me share why I love podcasts. I love podcasts because I have total control over what I listen to and when. Kind of like how I like my professional development. Sure, I have my favorite songs and audio that I like to consume. Maybe you're like me. I've never been able to get through and make a request on the radio. I'm going to be 37 years old. I've never gotten through to make a request. Now, again, going back a little bit to my origin, when Caitlin suggested I create a podcast of my own, that's when I first dove headfirst into the consumption pool. And I started with one podcast about creating podcasts. And then I expanded into some education podcasts since I was in the process of creating and then launching this show, the House of Edtech. And then that led into, listening to other education podcasts. I will joke with people that I am not old enough to play golf or, drink scotch or, smoke a cigar. One, I'm never going to smoke a cigar, and I had scotch and, it burns. But then I discovered podcasts about, some NPR shows, which I never thought I'd be old enough for NPR. And here I am listening to great podcasts like This American Life, Radio Lab. And as I sit here recording this, I will just, go over to iPad Mini, which is my consumption tool of choice. My app that I use is Overcast. And let me just share some of the NPR podcasts that I listen to besides, again, This American Life. Up First, I listen to that on a daily basis. Freakonomics, I've listened to an episode here and there. Of course, I mentioned Note to Self from WNYC Studios, right here local to me in New York City. Hidden Brain, I absolutely love and have been listening to since the beginning. Another one that would definitely be considered to be, public radio. And I'm not really sure if they're affiliated with NPR or not. Criminal, which is a true crime podcast, as well as also from the same people, their latest podcast, This Is Love, is another really cool podcast that is only, 4 or 5 episodes old, but definitely worth giving a listen to. Then, as I talk about my own podcasting journey and love for podcasts, it started with NPR, podcasts about podcasting. And then for me, it then got into finding podcasts about TV shows I watch. And in a number of places and outlets and forums, I have described things like the TV show podcasts, some of these guilty pleasure podcasts that I listen to, whether it's, the ESPN 30 for 30 podcast. Again, even some of the podcasts about podcasting I still listen to, even some of those are guilty pleasure. Making It, again, that's a podcast that is done by 3 YouTubers that I watch, and all 3 YouTubers, Bob Claggett, Jimmy DiResta, Dave Picciuto, they have great YouTube channels about woodworking and, DIY stuff. And they have an audio podcast that I love listening to because it gives me insight into, one, what it's like to be a YouTuber and the making culture, which, I can apply to my own life and, expose my students to. I also have a category in Overcast for personal growth. So, that's, again, my personal learning. And I'm, just kind of roughly scrolling in here. The Art of Manliness by Brett McKay from theartofmanliness.com. New podcast by the wonderful Lindsay Stumpenhorst, who, kicked off the show today. She has a great podcast that's brand new with her husband called the Power Struggle Podcast. Genuine, authentic conversation. Definitely want to go check that out. And there'll be links to, I'll just have to do a screenshot because I'm not going to remember everything that I mention. Great education podcast that I listen to. Start It Up, Teachonomy Talks, Principal PLN, Personal Growth One, The 5 a.m. Miracle, hosted by Jeff Sanders. I'm just going to go through this alphabetically. I'm a big sports radio guy, so I listen to, again, because I live here in Jersey, big fan of WFAN. I listen to Al's Boring Podcast, Al and Jerry's Postgame Podcast. Ask the Podcast Coach, Dave Jackson, along with School of Podcasting. This Learning Podcast by Jennifer Kronk, which I also produce. Better Podcasting from the Gonna Geek Network. Central City Underground, which is a Flash fan podcast. Multipedagogy, Dads in Ed, Dads on Deck, which I also produce. The EdTech TV podcast with awesome supporter Brent Warner. Brent, shout out to you. Please put out some new episodes. I miss you, man. Love your podcast. Google Teacher Tribe, which I produce. Hidden Brain, Note to Self, Podcast Help Desk, Podcasters Roundtable, The Podcasters Studio, Podcast PD, which I co-host with Stacey Lindis, AJ Bianco. Definitely want to head over to podcastpd.com to check that out. Story Behind, love Emily Prokop. If you love trivia and you love to just learn about interesting stuff that you can do in less than 9 minutes every episode, at least once a week, definitely check out The Story Behind. That's me going through all the podcasts that I listen to. I'm always looking for new podcasts. You know, right here in TweetDeck, I have a column for #tripod where I can now for this month and really anytime because TweetDeck is awesome. I can look and find and discover people who are sharing via social media podcasts that they listen to and podcasts that other people should try. So I'm encouraging you to share out what you're enjoying in podcasts and expose those podcasts to a large number of people who, at least in this month, are going to be looking at this hashtag more closely. And people are going to be looking at this hashtag, looking for new podcasts to listen to. To go back one little bit, again, to talk about why I love listening to podcasts, I love the fact, and you hopefully agree with me, that I love the fact that I can choose to learn, laugh, or simply get lost in a story. When I listen to some podcasts with Miles, we get lost, and I know that, you know, now he's 6 years old, I'm going to be 37, that we can sit and listen to, and our imaginations will run wild. All the shows I listen to, I get a picture that's painted, even from something like Al's Boring Podcast, which is about some of the weirdest stuff, but that's like would seem everyday and mundane, but still a picture gets painted for me as a listener of the show. Another great part that I love about podcasts, it's on my schedule. Listening is free. People are just giving away their content. Sure, you can support some shows financially, or you can use their affiliate links, or even make a direct donation. And, you know, while that's perfectly acceptable, you can also listen for free to your heart's content and never send a single cent, purchase one product, submit any feedback, or ever tell another person that you listen to a specific podcast. However, at the very least, you should reach out to the creator of any podcast you listen to via email or on Twitter. Let them know you appreciate the time and effort that's being put into creating something for you. Now, that's not a cheap plug for you to say, oh, I should send a tweet to Chris and let him know how much I appreciate the House of Edtech. You're listening. Thank you. If you want to take the time to send it to me, that's great. If you don't have time to send me a shout out on Twitter or send me an email, there are other podcasts that you listen to. Send it to somebody else. And then if you have time to do it a second time, then please tweet me, send me an email, send me that feedback I talked about in the EdTech Thought. Let me know what you think. That would be awesome. So again, here are some things that you can do this month or any time. Reach out and say thank you to the creators. Share, 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 share. Sharing is caring. For a lot of people, it stopped at the end of kindergarten. But if there's a podcast you love, talk about it. Somebody else how to subscribe to a podcast. Remember that there are about 4/5 of Americans who don't understand what we're doing here? Don't just talk about it. Take their phone. Don't steal it, but take their phone. Show them how to use the Apple Podcasts app or download Overcast or show them an app that they can use on their Android phone to listen to podcasts. And share it. Get people subscribed. Use hashtag Trypod, TRYPOD, to discover and share new recommendations. And I would be remiss if I didn't give a nice shout out to all of the education podcasts on the Education Podcast Network. Go to edupodcastnetwork.com and check out all of the great educational podcasts over there in March or anytime for anytime, anywhere professional development. And now it's time for the House of Edtech VIP. Congratulations to JP Prezavento. JP Prezavento has served the Fox C6 School District in Arnold, Missouri for 12 years. JP currently serves as the Instructional Technology Coordinator, where he develops and deploys professional development on technology and innovative instruction for the district's 850 teachers. Prior to this, JP was a high school English teacher for 8 years. JP has been recognized as a 2017 MET-C Spotlight Educator and is a Google for Education certified trainer. Mr. Prezavento has presented at a variety of local and regional conferences, including MET-C, Character Plus, the Missouri Summit featuring Google for Education, and more net. You can check out JP's website at jpprez.com, and that's jpprezz.com. And if you're not connected with JP on Twitter, you're going to want to head over there and follow him at jpprez. That's jpprezz. And congratulations, JP. You are the House of EdTech VIP. Hey, thank you for checking out this episode of the House of EdTech podcast. Again, if this was your first time here, thank you so much for checking it out. Let me know using hashtag Trypod. See what I did there? Let me know maybe who referred you to the podcast. If you're a longtime listener, again, share what we're doing here. Thank you again to Kite Learning for supporting this episode. Looking forward to meeting the folks over at Kite Learning when I head out. Oh boy. I am going to learn a lot of lessons because now I'm just letting you know now that this whole episode was recorded live and broadcast to Periscope on March 10th, 2018. So, learning some lessons. Again, after 4 years, I'm a little bit comfortable, or let's say I'm more comfortable, leaving some of this stuff in. So, any glaring mistakes were removed from the final version of this episode. But something like this, we're going to leave it in and be a little more human, because that's something I've come to learn as a podcaster, is to be human and kind of keep things in. But I digress. Thank you to Kite Learning, and I'm looking forward to meeting them when I get out to Utah for USET 2018. Keep the conversation going. That's right, we're going to keep talking about this episode, and if you go back and you listen to older episodes, I want to hear your thoughts on the show. For this episode, you can go over to chrisnessy.com/105. That's 105. Looking forward to seeing your comments on the blog post for this episode. Or you can send me a message by going to chrisnessy.com/feedback. If you enjoy the House of EdTech, as I just said in most of this episode, do me a favor. Tell somebody about this podcast. If you share it on social media, use the hashtag House of EdTech, or you can tag it directly at House of EdTech on Twitter, Instagram. You can also become an awesome supporter of the podcast. Many thanks, for which what I'm doing would not be possible at this point. Many thanks to Eric Kurtz, Dan Gallagher, Peggy George, Jen Giffen, Mark Grindell, Jeff Herb, and JP Prezavento, the newest awesome supporter, Scott Titmus, and Brent Warner, for all your support. If you're interested, go to chrisnessy.com/awesome. The next episode of the podcast will be episode 106. And again, this is going to be recorded on location from USET and be released on March 25th, 2018. Until next time, thank you for learning with me, and remember, using technology isn't difficult. Just give it a try. The House of Edtech is a proud member of Voice Ed Radio. Voice Ed Radio. Your voice is right here. For more great content, go to voiceed.ca. The House of Edtech is a proud member of the Education Podcast Network. The Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. For more, go to edupodcastnetwork.com.